Vanessa Delagana, and welcome to Learn English Grammar with Vanessa. Today is another day, and this means we are going to learn a new grammar lesson. So, are you ready? Great! Now, I want you to look at these sentences and observe the group of highlighted words. If you subscribe to this online service, you will need a password. The store ran out of the sale item quickly because supplies were limited. So, do you recognize what are these group of red and green highlighted words? That's right! The group of green highlighted words are independent clauses, while the group of red highlighted words are dependent clauses. How is that so? Well, let's find out. In this lesson, we are going to talk about independent and dependent clauses. First, let's have an outline of what we will be covering for today. So first, we are going to define a clause. Second, let's talk about the two types of clauses, independent clause and dependent clause. Third, we're going to learn on how to combine these clauses. And lastly, I've got a mini quiz for you at the end of this video to make sure that this grammar lesson will truly stick in your mind. So hang around till the end of this video to test what you know. Every sentence we write or say are created from several smaller parts or group of words that we call clauses. At its simplest, a clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. A clause contrasts with a phrase, which does not contain a subject and a verb. The distinction between a clause and a phrase is clearer when you see them side by side. Anna sings when she wakes up. This is a clause. It has a subject, which is she, and a verb, which is wakes up. Anna sings in the morning. This is a phrase. There is no subject and no verb. Get it? Okay, let's have another example. I love to read books during nighttime. I love to read books because I feel like I am in another world. Which do you think is the clause? Is it the first one or the second one? That's right! It is the second one because it contains a subject, which is I, and a verb, which is feel. There are two types of clauses, independent clause and dependent clause. Independent clause is a clause that can stand on its own because it contains all the information necessary to be a complete sentence. In order for a clause to be independent and function as a sentence, we must remember these three things. First, it should contain a subject, a verb, and it should express a complete thought. Let's look at these examples. Jim studied in the library. My mother cooks dinner. These are independent clauses because they contain a subject, a verb, and expresses a complete thought. Some clauses cannot stand on their own because they depend on other clauses to make them a full sentence. These types of clauses are dependent clauses. A dependent clause does not express a complete thought. It needs to be connected with another clause in order to make a full sentence. In order to identify dependent clauses, we need to look for these things: subject, verb, and it starts with marker words such as before, after, because, since, in order to, although, though, whenever, and more. Or it should start with a conjunction such as and, but, yet, and more. Let's look at these examples. But he went home. If you think you can. These are independent clauses because they begin with a marker word or a conjunction. It also contains a subject and a verb, and it does not express a complete thought or a main idea. Now that you know the two basic types of clauses, you're ready to learn on how to put this knowledge into practice. We will go over two independent and or dependent clause scenarios to show you what to do. To combine two independent clauses, you have two options. You can use a comma with a conjunction, or you can use a semicolon. If you use a comma with conjunction, the acronym Fun Boys will help you remember the conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. If you use a semicolon, you do not have to capitalize the first letter of the next sentence. For example, there are two independent clauses. I got coffee, she got tea. To use a comma and conjunction, we put it this way: I got coffee, comma, after the first independent clause, and then the second independent clause will start with a conjunction, and she got tea. I got coffee, and she got tea. To use a semicolon, we put it this way: I got coffee, semicolon, she got tea. The second independent clause starts with a small letter. In this scenario, you will either attach the dependent clause to the independent clause with a comma or without a comma. It depends on where the dependent clause occurs in the sentence. When it comes before the independent clause, we always use a comma. When it comes after the independent clause, you will not use a comma. For example, because he did his homework, he got to go to the game. In this sentence, the dependent clause comes before the independent clause. That's why we make use of the comma. He got to go to the game because he did his homework. In this sentence, the dependent clause comes after the independent clause. That's why there is no use of a comma. However, when a dependent clause begins with any of the words listed below and follows an independent clause, it will need a comma. These words create contrast in the sentence, so a comma is needed for more clarity. We have although, though, even though, whereas. Let's take a look at this exception in a sentence. Mr. Williams said my essay needed more work, although he did like my idea. In this sentence, the dependent clause comes after the independent clause, but we have a contrast word, which is although. So that's why we need to use a comma. In summary, to combine two independent clauses, use a semicolon or a comma with a conjunction. To attach a dependent clause, use a comma if it comes before the independent clause, and do not use a comma if it comes after the independent clause, unless it is a contrast word. Okay, so it's time to test everything you know with a mini quiz. Let's see if you remembered what we tackled about. So, did you get all the correct answers? If not, you could go back to some parts of the video where you still got confused. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Thank you so much and see you soon here at Learn English Grammar with Vanessa.